First of all, there's a lot of talk about Stamos' hair, but your hair in this episode was also pretty on point. So I think you need a little more credit in the hair department than you get.
John wouldn't admit that, but I could never give him a run for his money.
No, it was pretty perfect. I'm telling you, you had the feather and the little tail in the back, the thing going. I don't know, it was looking pretty good.
It was a hockey haircut.
Hey, man.
Hockey haircut, man. I looked like Jaromir Jagr in his young days.
And the pants, I think my kids actually wear those pants now. It's like they're back in style.
They are. You know what I
parachute-y balloon.
they were.
It's like cinched at the waist, but then.
Now they got the high pants.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's wearing the high pants.
Listen, I'll take that.
Yeah.
When you have daughters who are teenagers, I'll take the high.
We'll take the high.
Let's hike them up instead of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Better
than the other.
Yeah. Instead of back
in the 90s when we went the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much.
We'll keep it up there. Let's keep it high and tight.
I got you. I want to just jump into Fuller House.
Yes.
When you first came into Fuller House with our Full House cast all there, I mean, it was new for us. It was new for us, but we're an old family.
Yep.
And it can be a little bit intimidating.
Big time.
I mean, what did you think when you first arrived? What were some of your early thoughts?
Well, it was a handful of things. It was the old, I don't want to step on any toes feeling.
Right.
And then there was the imposter syndrome, like pinch me because do I belong here kind of thing, you know? But the real key to what your guys' success, the show's success, everything is everyone was just so loving right away. So I didn't really go through a period of like not feeling like I belonged because everyone welcomed me. I did have a feeling for the first few episodes of like, stay out of the way. This is their world, their show, just deliver what they're looking for, and, but man, I just fell in love with everyone right away. A slight confession that, is that when I was younger, I didn't actually watch the show.
I didn't either.
Well, no, and I don't mean that in any way. It was like we had one TV in our house. There was no TiVo.
I get it, sure.
So if you didn't watch it live when you were growing up and it didn't happen to be the one thing, so I didn't know, of course I knew all the characters. You guys were woven into the fabric of our childhood and pop culture. So I was well aware of everyone. But I think there was a little added benefit that I wasn't such like a crazed fan of like every storyline.
Sure.
So like, for example, showing up right away and meeting Candace, like I got to meet her as an associate and a work partner versus like, oh my God, this is DJ. And and I think there was an advantage to that like I was meeting everyone as an actor for the first time.
Sure.
I mean, it led to the point where I remember the first time when we're in the vet clinic and we have our first kiss and she says, "Oh, my Lanta." I literally went home that night and I was like, this is the strangest choice of a tagline. And it wasn't until my kids started watching the original show and I'm cooking breakfast in the kitchen, and my kids are watching in the living room, and I hear in the background a young Candace on TV say, "Oh, my Lanta." I come running into the living room and I'm like, oh my God, like I got to do a little research here. Like this is her tagline. And I realized everyone has their tagline and that's how it goes. But, again, I think it gave me a little bit of a sense of, instead of being in awe as a fan, I was in awe as a human. Like everyone was such a wonderful human being. And that's what I fell in love with on set. And it put me at ease to then, be welcomed in.
Well, yeah, I will say this, John, you were one of those actors, and not all were like this, but you were one of those actors that came in and right away you felt like family. You felt like, oh, this guy just belongs here, and it was kind of seamless, which is what you want, because, we're already kind of established. We know, like you said, all our catchphrases. We know exactly where we're going on that set.
Totally.
We know our bits. We're pretty programmed at this point. And, coming into that environment can be, like, you got to kind of learn the rhythms that everybody has. You don't know what the egos are.
Totally.
You don't know what somebody's idiosyncrasies are. You got me and Bob clowning around constantly, trying to make people laugh. But you fit right in, which was great. That's what you want.
Well, I so appreciate those words. It means a lot to me because the show was the greatest experience. I do have to comment on one thing because you say you guys clowning around, because I learned so much from watching you guys. Because yes, you clown around, and yes, you might play a goofy guy on television. What so impressed me about you, Dave, specifically, is like what a technician you actually are. Because it looks like you're playing someone goofy, but behind that is like such a skilled craft. And I think there's a misconception when people are goofy on screen that they may not be that as sophisticated or whatever. But I remember right away learning like you're a pilot. And so that your brain works as like a technician, and watching you work, just like watching you direct, like there's such a cool craft that you apply that comes off as this like, oh, I'm just a fun goof and make everybody laugh. But it is such a skill. I mean, I was always just so impressed with your level of professionalism that comes off as goofy playtime, but it's like, oh, no. Dave's never going to miss a line. He's never going to miss a cue. He's never going to be late. Like he checks all the boxes that may be outside the goofy box in order to pull off this fun, free-spirited goofball.
Well, thanks, but I don't know what John's talking about. I really don't. I really don't understand. You had mentioned to me a couple of times, and you mentioned Candace's first kiss, that it was a little uncomfortable meeting her husband Val after that.
Yes.
Well, just walk us through that.
Well, listen, I love Val, but he's a former professional hockey player, Russian, different culture. But honestly, he's such a sweetheart. And then, everyone's obvious, Candace is like, yeah, he might be dry at times or whatnot, but when you can, you get a giggle out of him here and there, and obviously huge respect for him and great dude. And that family, they're they're the cover of the magazine.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they are. They're very together. And it's funny because I introduced those two, at a hockey game.
Totally.
But it's not like Val would come up to you, so I see you kissing my wife.
Right.
I thought you were a comrade.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's
got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. It's dry, right?
It's very dry.
And the contrast of that though was Candace's dad, who was always he was like the Cheshire Cat backstage, which at first I didn't know, but he was always like a giggling teenager. Behind the scenes.
I'll tell you, it was great to see her parents, coming back to see us again. It was just like the memories just keep kind of like, it's just a memory machine, of wow, all these years ago, I remember backstage, because Robert was always very inquisitive. He'd come up and go, I remember the first episode I directed, he goes, do you feel like you know what you're doing? And I'd go, yeah, it's show night.
Right, sure, certainly.
I better after the past 5 days have gone by, I better know what I'm doing. And he goes, well, good. And I'm like, I don't know what this is supposed to mean right now.
Totally. What I always thought cool was watching, it was when her parents, Jody's parents, and Andrea's parents would all be sitting in the show, because we had kids on the show and during Fuller House, and their parents were there sitting behind them. And it was this new generation of parents watching their kids, but also the older generation watching their kids who are now adults leading the show, and so proud. It was such a cool thing to see, for everyone. It was just I remember Bob, every time we were on stage, he's like, can you believe it? Lightning in a bottle twice. Yeah. Not a day went by he didn't mention that.
And we appreciated it. We appreciated coming back and being there. Cause they always say, oh, you can never move back home again. You can't go back home again, but we got to go back home, which was phenomenal. And to be on the same stage at Warner Brothers, I remember the first day going and seeing our set, I just started bawling my eyes out. I was like, wow, we're back home. This is crazy. It was magical. I want to shift gears. You were in the movie Furious 7.
Yes.
And a lot of huge stars were in that movie. It reads like a virtual Hollywood list. You got The Rock, Vin Diesel, Kurt Russell, Ludacris. I want to talk about your buddy Paul too after this. But what was it like working with those guys? Were you hanging with those cats?
It was awesome. It was what incredible experience. It was a pinch me moment again. And it was really, I had to give James Wan credit because he directed Furious 7 and he had plucked me. He directed The Conjuring and sort of plucked me. One of those weird situations where he doesn't really have many principals to cast because cast is all coming back.
Right.
So I was probably one of the few principals that he was able to cast and bring along. And I owe so much to James Wan. What an amazing dude. But they were great. It was a mixed bag of the biggest celebrities on the planet. My day one was with everybody. We were all in this warehouse. It was like cars and guns and, I'm Kurt Russell's sidekick and it's Ludacris and Tyrese and Michelle's there and Vin and Paul, but really it comes down, Paul was the so cool and so welcoming and so down to earth that immediately made me feel like one of the dudes.
Right.
A story I've told, like day one, I remember I was walking to Crafty and he was walking back from Crafty and he stuck his hand out and he gave me a high five. And it reminded me of back in high school when you'd walk by your buddy and you wouldn't even say anything, but you just give him an elbow or give him a high five.
Yeah.
And it was like a bro moment of just like love. And it was this welcoming moment that made me go, oh man, that was so cool. Like he probably didn't even think about it. He just put his hand out, gave me a high five, but I was like, okay, I'm where I need to be. And like, so he was really just really incredible. And then working as Kurt Russell's sidekick, watching him work, who's still loves the game so much and is there early and is working on it. You want to run lines, John? I'm like, yeah, I want to run lines with Kurt Russell all day long. What do you need? And like, just really like into the work and the craft. And after all these years, doesn't take anything for granted.
It's cool for those people to do that because they don't have to. They do not have to. Nope. And we've probably both been in situations where it's cold as ice and you just go and you're like, okay, I've just got to do my lines and get out of here.
Totally.
You know? Yeah. And so for them to do that, being such huge stars with this franchise, that's pretty darn cool. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Full House Rewind. We'll see you next week.